Have you ever noticed your dog staring at you with an intensity that feels almost human, as if they're trying to tell you something crucial that you're not quite understanding? If you've ever experienced this, you need to listen to the information that I've known for almost 60 years, but I haven't shared with anyone until now, because this information needs to be known. The time has come. And I knew it would. What I'm about to tell you and what I've seen coming will completely change the way how you view your relationship with your dog. So make sure to listen my words carefully till the end. Between 1920 and 1961, I documented thousands of dreams, visions, and psychological insights that seem to peer directly into humanity's future. Through my work with concepts like the collective unconscious and psychological archetypes, I made predictions that have proven eerily accurate decades later. I foresaw the digital age, mass surveillance, and even global pandemics. But there's one prediction of mine that remained buried in my private journals, a warning about dogs that is manifesting right now in your home in ways you never imagined possible. During my research into the collective unconscious, I discovered something extraordinary about the psychological relationship between humans and dogs. I realized these animals weren't just pets or companions, they were what I called shadow mirrors, living reflections of humanity's suppressed psychological content that would eventually surface during times of great collective transformation. The canine archetype will activate when human consciousness approaches the threshold of its next evolutionary leap. I wrote in my private journal in 1954, they will become the guardians of our psychological shadows, forcing us to confront what we have denied about ourselves. The time of reckoning between human and dog consciousness is inevitable. I saw that dogs possessed a unique ability to access what I termed the species unconscious, a deeper layer of awareness that connects all living beings. I predicted that during periods of intense global change, dogs would begin to mirror back humanity's collective psychological state, acting as living barometers of our spiritual and mental health. What makes my prediction so remarkable is the precision with which I identified when this canine psychological awakening would begin. I stated that the first signs would appear when humanity entered what I called the age of technological possession, clearly referring to your current digital era, combined with massive psychological upheaval on a planetary scale. I identified three distinct phases of this canine psychological evolution. The first would be dogs becoming hypersensitive to their owner's emotional states, essentially functioning as living mood detectors. The second phase would involve dogs beginning to exhibit behaviors that directly mirror their owner's suppressed psychological content, their shadow selves. The third and most intense phase would see dogs acting as psychological catalysts, forcing their owners to confront and integrate parts of themselves they've been avoiding. When the machines think for humans, I wrote in 1958, clearly anticipating artificial intelligence, the dogs will think with them. They will become the bridge between conscious and unconscious, showing humanity what it has forgotten about its own nature. But here's what makes this prophecy both terrifying and fascinating. I wasn't describing a distant future. I was warning you about exactly what is happening right now. And if you have a dog, you've probably already started noticing the signs without realizing what they actually mean. Modern researchers are now documenting cases that perfectly align with my predictions. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a Jungian psychologist at Stanford University, has spent the last decade studying patterns that are impossible to ignore. We are seeing dogs exhibit behaviors that directly correspond to their owners' psychological blind spots, she explains. It's as if they're acting out the parts of their owners' personalities that have been repressed or denied. The case of Marcus Rodriguez exemplifies this phenomenon perfectly. Marcus, a 38-year-old executive, always prided himself on being calm and controlled. He never raised his voice, never showed anger, and considered himself a peaceful person. But his dog, Thor, a normally gentle golden retriever, began displaying increasingly aggressive behavior, but only when Marcus was suppressing his own frustration or anger. Thor would growl and pace every time I was having problems at work that I wasn't acknowledging, Marcus reports. It took me months to realize he was acting out the anger I was refusing to feel. When I finally started allowing myself to experience and express my frustration in healthy ways, Thor's aggressive episodes completely stopped. Veterinarians worldwide are documenting similar phenomena that validate my early observations. symptoms. Dogs whose owners struggle with depression begin showing lethargic, withdrawn behavior. Dogs belonging to people with anxiety issues develop hypervigilant tendencies. Dogs living with individuals who have trust issues become overly protective or suspicious of strangers. Dr. Robert Chen, a behavioral veterinarian in Los Angeles, has documented over 500 cases of what he calls psychological mirroring in dogs. These animals are reflecting psychological states their owners aren't even aware they possess, he explains. It's forcing people to look at aspects of themselves they've been unconsciously avoiding. The phenomenon goes beyond simple emotional mirroring, exactly as I predicted. Dogs are beginning to act out their owners' repressed desires, fears, and even childhood traumas. Jennifer Walsh's dog, Bella, suddenly developed an obsessive fear of water, despite loving baths and swimming for years. Through therapy, Jennifer discovered that Bella's behavior coincided with Jennifer's own suppressed memories of a near-drowning experience from childhood that she had completely forgotten. Bella was holding my trauma for me, Jennifer explains. She couldn't be around water because I had buried this terrifying experience so deep that I wasn't even conscious of it anymore. When I finally processed the memory and worked through the trauma, Bella's fear disappeared overnight. My second phase prediction is also manifesting rapidly. Dogs are exhibiting what psychologists call compensatory behaviors, acting out the personality traits their owners most need to develop but are resisting. Lisa Thompson, an extremely introverted software developer, watched in amazement as her typically shy rescue dog Max became increasingly social and outgoing. Max started approaching strangers, wanting to play with other dogs, basically doing everything I was too afraid to do, she says. It was like he was showing me the social person I could become if I stepped out of my comfort zone. Animal shelters report that dogs are somehow selecting owners who need specific psychological growth experiences precisely as I anticipated. It's as if these animals can sense which humans require particular types of healing or development. Anna Rodriguez, a shelter coordinator in Phoenix, documents this phenomenon daily. Dogs gravitate toward people who need to learn the exact lessons that particular dog can teach, she explains. Anxious people attract calm, grounding dogs. Rigid, controlling people are drawn to free-spirited, playful animals. It's like each dog has a specific psychological mission. But my most startling prediction was about the third phase, dogs functioning as psychological catalysts that would force their owners into periods of intensive self-examination and growth. This phase is beginning to manifest in ways that are both beautiful and challenging. Dogs are developing what researchers call therapeutic instincts. They're spontaneously engaging in behaviors that push their owners to confront psychological blocks, process emotions, and integrate shadow aspects of their personalities. Michael Santos experienced this firsthand when his dog, Luna, began destroying specific items in his house, only objects connected to his failed marriage that he'd been unable to process emotionally. Luna would chew up photographs, letters, anything that reminded me of my ex-wife, Michael explains. She was forcing me to deal with feelings I'd been avoiding for years. It was painful, but ultimately healing. The psychological pressure dogs are exerting on their owners is creating what I call accelerated individuation, rapid psychological development that would normally take decades. Dr. Patricia Williams, author of The Canine Shadow, has treated hundreds of clients experiencing intense psychological breakthroughs triggered by their dog's behavior. These animals are acting as four-legged therapists, she explains. They're creating situations that force people to confront their deepest fears, their repressed emotions, and their authentic selves. But here's the crucial question my warning raises. Are we ready for what our dogs are trying to show us about ourselves? I predicted that not all humans would be prepared for this psychological revelation. I saw that many people would resist their dog's attempts at psychological healing, leading to increased behavioral problems, stronger symptoms, and even the breakdown of the human-dog relationship. Those who deny their shadow will find their canine companions increasingly difficult to manage, I wrote. The dogs will become more insistent, more demanding, until their humans finally surrender to the psychological work that needs to be done. Statistics support my prediction. Veterinary behaviorists report a 300% increase in sudden onset behavioral problems in dogs since 2020. These aren't medical issues. They're psychological phenomena that resolve only when owners engage in deep self-examination and personal growth work. The timing of my canine warning aligns perfectly with what I called humanity's psychological crisis point, a period when our species would face the choice between psychological evolution or psychological stagnation. You are living through unprecedented global challenges that are forcing humanity to confront its collective shadow: climate change, political polarization, technological dependency, and social isolation. I predicted that during exactly this type of crisis, dogs would emerge as psychological guides to help humans navigate their inner transformation. The greater the external chaos, I wrote, the more insistent the canine teachers will become. They will not allow humanity to remain unconscious during its most crucial evolutionary moment. Before we continue, I want to invite you to explore what I call the Shadow Integration Challenge, a 21-day program where you'll explore your psychological depths, integrate your shadow self, and unlock your authentic power. For 3 weeks, you'll have daily practices to confront what you've been avoiding and transform it into strength. The question remains, what is your dog trying to tell you about yourself? If you have a dog, my warning suggests you need to pay attention to patterns in their behavior that seem to mirror or contrast with your own psychological state. Are they acting out emotions you're suppressing, exhibiting fears that reflect your own unconscious anxieties, displaying the confidence or social skills you wish you had? I developed a simple protocol for understanding your dog's psychological messages. First, identify any behavioral changes or persistent patterns in your dog that seem unrelated to health or training issues. Then ask yourself, what aspect of my personality or psychology might this behavior represent? The most profound aspect of my canine warning is its implications for human evolution. I believe that dogs are serving as psychological catalysts to accelerate our species' development toward what I call the integrated human, someone who has successfully unified their conscious and unconscious minds. Through the canine mirror, humans will finally see themselves completely. I predicted this will be painful but necessary for the next phase of human consciousness. Dogs are forcing us to become more authentic, more emotionally intelligent, and more psychologically whole. They're not allowing us to hide from ourselves anymore. The rise of therapy dogs, emotional support animals, and canine-assisted psychotherapy represents the mainstream recognition of what I predicted decades ago. These animals possess an innate ability to facilitate psychological healing and growth. Research centers worldwide are documenting that dogs can detect psychological disorders, predict mental health crises, and even sense when their owners are ready for breakthrough psychological work. My final warning was perhaps my most important: those who ignore their dog's psychological messages do so at their own peril. The psychological content that dogs are reflecting will not simply disappear. If ignored, it will intensify until it can no longer be denied. The canine shadow will grow more insistent until acknowledged, I wrote. Resistance will only amplify the message. Your dog isn't just a pet. According to my warning, they're a psychological guide, a shadow mirror, and a catalyst for your own psychological evolution. The time I warned you about has arrived. The question is, are you ready to see what your dog has been trying to show you about yourself all along?